Okay, so welcome to Monday, 18th of January, and today we're looking at can I use speech punctuation? So it's going to be lots and lots of little tasks today. So it'll be a little bit of video and then a little bit of pause in and pause in the video, pause in the video, a little bit like that. So there's lots of little tasks just based on speech punctuation. I'm going to ask the year threes watch to a certain point, and then I'm going to ask the year threes, that'll be the end of your session, and year fours just carry on for a few more slides because year fours is a few extra little bits that you need to know and be aware of. So we're just starting then with speech punctuation. The first part is to get right is the speech marks, and they just go around the words that have been spoken by that person. So in this example, then the first one's wrong there. So hello, how are you? Said Jack. So the speech mark here, that final speech mark is wrong because Jack isn't saying said Jack. The only words that Jack is saying is, hello, how are you? So that one, first one is wrong. The second one is also wrong because the speech marks, whilst they have been going around the words that Jack is saying, so hello, they're not going around all of the words that Jack is saying. So he's also saying, how are you? So the speech marks need to go around every single word that Jack is saying and no words that Jack isn't saying. So this last one is right. Hello, how are you? Said Jack. So speech marks go around the words that he said. So if you just want to pause the video and just rewrite these sentences with the speech marks in the right place. Okay, so if you've got them in the right place, hopefully then you will have put them in these places. So the speech marks in the first one go around I have a hamster at home. That's what Mary's saying. And then Mike asked, well, the speech marks go around what he asked, which is where are the oranges? Cool. Okay, so nice and simple. Now, sometimes a speech might be broken up into two sections. And here we'll need two sets of speech marks. So I'll show you what I mean. So you could say, I have £3, said Lainey happily. How many sweets can I buy? So if you're writing like that, to vary your sentences, often you have a little bit of, you put the said so-and-so in the middle, and then they go on and they say a little bit more, and it kind of breaks up that sentence. So here you're going to need two sets of speech marks because you need to make sure you're not putting the speech marks around the said Lainey happily. So you only put the speech marks around what she says first, I have £3, and then what she says after, how many sweets can I buy? So there you split it up into two sections. So have a go again. So here's just one example. So if you have a go at this, just pause the video and just rewrite this, making sure you've got two sets of speech marks here and a little gap in the middle. Okay, so what you can see here is you've got two things the doctor is saying. So he's saying you'll have to take these 3 times a day. And then he's saying, make sure you don't forget. So said the doctor shouldn't have any speech marks around it because he's not saying that bit. So it should look something like this. You'll have to take these 3 times a day. Speech marks, said the doctor, make sure you don't forget. And that being speech marks as well. So just make sure that that's where you've got your speech marks in that sentence there. Okay, so you also need to remember then the next bit, you need to remember to start each piece of speech with a capital letter. All right, so for this example, this first one is wrong because we've got the firefighter asked, how did the blaze start? And it looks right. Everything else we've been saying so far is correct, except it needs a capital letter for the first thing that firefighter asks. It's almost like it's a start of his speech sentence, so it needs to start with the capital. So it should look like that second example there. The firefighter asked, how did the blaze start? And we got the capital there. Now, something to note on this is if you've got two sections of speech, just like we were looking at, you only start the first bit with a capital. So if you look here, this again is wrong. That's awful, said the firefighter. How did the blaze start? So this bit here doesn't need a capital because he's already started speaking. It's only the beginning bit, the first part of his sentence that needs a capital. That's awful. The second part of his sentence doesn't need a capital because it's still the same sentence. So it's like putting a capital in the middle of a sentence. You wouldn't do that. So that's still the same sentence the firefighter is saying. So you wouldn't need a capital until he starts a new sentence. So here you just have the correct version is that's awful with a capital. Said the firefighter, how did the blaze start? So he doesn't need a capital there because it's still continuing his sentence. Hopefully that makes sense. That's quite a complicated rule there. So let's have a go. Have a go at these ones. So this is kind of a mix of lots of the rules we've looked at. So there's 5 sentences there. So if you can just have a go at rewriting all of those sentences using all the rules we've looked at so far and putting in the speech punctuation that needs to be and capital letters if you need to. So I'll let you pause the video there. Okay, so let's have a look at how we wrote this. So just compare what you've written with the answers here. Okay, so I've highlighted in green all the things which you should have added in. So we've got David said, speech marks, capital letter, the chickens have all escaped, and a speech mark at the end. The next one, you needed speech mark and capital letter for the beginning of what Norma was saying, elephants are on the loose, then a speech mark. And then for the second part of the sentence, you need a speech mark, doesn't need a capital because it's still the same sentence, get the big net, and then a speech mark at the end. The third one just simply needs, the mayor said, you need speech mark, capital letter, this is a very important occasion, and a speech mark at the end. And the fourth one is a 2-part, isn't it? It's 2 parts of his sentence. So the first bit, the cupboards are overflowing, needs capital and speech marks. Exclaim mum. And then the second bit needs speech marks, but it doesn't need the capital on that second bit there. And then finally, nice and simple, what do you normally have for tea? Need speech marks. And then obviously you need that capital letter there. What do you normally have for tea? Ask the doctor. So I think at that point, let me just quickly check. Yep, I think at that point, that's where year 3s, that's the end of today's session. Obviously, if you'd like to go on year 3s, if you're feeling confident with this and you'd like to go on and do some year 4 work, that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying you have to stop there. But year 3s, you can stop there. That's all you need to know for year 3. Year 4s, it's just a couple more slides to go through, just because there's a few more rules you need to be using when you get to year 4 with speech marks. So if you are coming on with me, there are just 2 other rules to remember when it comes to speech punctuation. So first, there must be a comma before the first speech mark and some sort of punctuation before the last speech mark. So I'll show you what I mean. So here we've got, the doctor said, how are you today? So before the speech mark, we have a comma. So the doctor said, comma, how are you today? And then before that final speech mark, we need some sort of punctuation. This one obviously is a question mark, but it doesn't have to be a question mark. There's lots of different options, but it does need some punctuation. So this one would be, Liam screamed. You've got a comma there before the speech mark. And this time, because he's screaming, it's a huge ladybird, this time I'm going to put an exclamation mark before the speech mark at the end, which is absolutely fine too. Or third one, it might be a full stop. So Kerry said, comma before the speech mark, and then before the final speech mark, a full stop. I like monkeys, full stop. So you might choose to do that. Obviously, if your speech starts the sentence, you don't need a comma before it there, because it's the start of a sentence. So if I've got, let's have a go, said David, I still need some sort of punctuation before that final speech mark. In this case, because it's not a question or an exclamation or the end of the sentence, I've just put a comma there. So most of the time before your final speech mark will just be a comma. Watch out for these mistakes again. So you can't put a full stop here. Have a nice day, said John. That can't be a full stop because that's not the end of the sentence. The end of a sentence is said John. So you can't put a full stop there. Have a nice day. That would probably be a comma there. Although you could put an exclamation mark, couldn't you, if you wanted to make him kind of shout it or say it really excitedly. And just make sure with this one, Jenny asked, comma, where are you going, comma, and speech marks. All the punctuation is where it needs to be, except because where are you going is a question, you can't put a comma there. It does have to be a question mark. So if it is a question, it has to be a question mark before the speech mark. You don't need to put a question mark and a comma. It's just one piece of punctuation. But if it is a question, it does need to be a question mark. Okay, hopefully that's clear. So let's have a go at this. So all you're doing here is you're adding in, rewriting your sentences, but you're adding in the speech marks and a comma before the first speech mark if it's not the beginning of the sentence, and then something before the last speech mark. Okay, let's see what we've done. So with this one, there is some sort of choice of yourselves. So sometimes, often it's a choice between putting a full stop or a comma or an exclamation mark at the end, depending on how you want your person to be saying it. So this is how I've done it. So I've got Sean said, comma, I like your hat. And now I've just put a full stop before the end. Though, of course, you could put an exclamation mark to make him say it like really excitedly, I like your hat. The second one there, I've got these elephants are very tame. I've got a capital at the beginning, and I've just put a comma there at the end because I think they're just saying it normally, said the zookeeper. This one, I've got Marcus shouted, I've got a comma before the speech marks, and then quick run, and I put an exclamation mark there because I think he is shouting it, and he's shouting something that would need an exclamation mark. And then finally, this was a tricky one because there were two parts to the sentence. So I've got capital letter, my trousers are too small, and then a comma, exclaimed Billy, comma before the next speech mark, I can barely breathe. And then I've ended that with an exclamation mark. So I wanted to be saying it like that, though, of course, you could have put a full stop or a comma to look on that. So hopefully, just to correct any mistakes if you've made any, and then we can move on to our last point. And our last rule is this, which is when a new person starts speaking, you start a new line. And I thought this was easiest to explain by showing you an example from Grandpa's Great Escape. So I just picked a random page where some people were talking, and you can see how this works. So I think it is Jack talking to Raj, the newsagent. And at the beginning, Jack says, my mum said they'll be straight over to pick us up. And then because now the newsagent's speaking, we start a new line, and it says, splendid, replied the newsagent. And now when the newsagent talks again, now while you are waiting, we don't start a new line because it's still the newsagent talking. And he says, now while you are waiting, can I interest you in a complimentary browse of my brand new Christmas cards? And then we start a new line because now Jack's speaking. No, thank you, Raj. It's January. And then we start a new line again. And it says, this one is particularly Christmassy, said the man as he showed Jack what was, in fact, a completely blank white card. A couple of things to note here. Firstly, the reason is why we do it. And you can tell here, no, thank you, Raj, it's January. This one is particularly Christmassy. If you didn't have a new line there, that would be really difficult to understand whether it was Jack who was saying this one is particularly Christmassy or whether it was Raj. It would be a little bit confusing for the reader. So that's why we start a new line. The other one is, notice how when they start a new line, they're indenting it a little bit. That's this little gap they leave here. And I hope you can see my mouse. So this little gap here is what is an indent. And the reason they do that is because if they started a new line here, and you can imagine if this line was a bit longer and it came to the end, so Christmas cards came right to the end there, and then you started your new line right to the margin, it wouldn't look like they'd started a new line. It just looked like they come to the edge of the page. So I'm not making everyone do that at this point. That's if you find that hard to remember, don't worry. But that little indent there is something which you can do if you like. It's often what they do in books. So your last task for today then is just to have a go at this. I've just got a short conversation between two people, but I've put it, or I haven't started any new lines. So to put together everything you know today is to rewrite that, start in the new lines where you need to, put in all the speech punctuation, and see how you get on. And there you go. So that is how I would have done it, just like that. So yeah, I'll leave that with you. You can just check any mistakes. And that is all for today. So I know today's been a little bit a lot of grammar based. We haven't really been looking at the story, but tomorrow we will get back to looking at the min pins and get back to our story with little Billy. Cool. Thank you very much.